The burning bush, also known as the unburnt bush, refers to an event documented in the Jewish Torah, as well as in the biblical Old Testament and Islamic scripture. It is described in the 3rd chapter of the book of Exodus as taking place on Mount Horeb. According to the account, the bush appeared to be on fire but was not consumed by the flames, which gave it its name. Both the biblical and Quranic narratives identify the burning bush as the location where God appointed Moses to lead the Israelites out of Egypt and into Canaan. The Hebrew word for bush used in this story is Sene, Hebrew, Romanized, Sne, which specifically refers to brambles. Notably, Sene is a dislegomenon, a term that appears only twice in Hebrew scripture, both times referring to the burning bush. Some scholars suggest that the use of Sene is a deliberate wordplay on Sinai, a literary feature often found in Hebrew texts. In the narrative, an angel of the Lord appears within a bush, and God subsequently calls out to Moses, who is tending Jethro's flocks nearby. As Moses approaches, God commands him to remove his sandals because the place is sacred ground. The voice in the bush identifies itself as Yahweh, declaring, "I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob." At this revelation, Moses hides his face in fear. Some scholars believe the account combines elements from the Yahwist and Elohist sources. The Yahwist includes the angel of Yahweh and the command to remove sandals, while the Elohist parallels these details with God directly speaking and Moses turning his face away. Yahweh tells Moses that he has seen the oppression of the Israelites in Egypt and has decided to send Moses to Pharaoh to free them. Moses is instructed to inform the Israelite elders that Yahweh will lead them to the land of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Hivites, and Jebusites, a fertile land described as flowing with milk and honey. When Moses asks for God's name to share with the Israelites, Yahweh replies, "I am who I am," linking the name Yahweh to the Hebrew verb haya, to be. Yahweh then provides Moses with a series of miraculous signs to validate his mission. His staff transforms into a snake, his hand is temporarily afflicted with snowy zarath, and water is turned into blood. Despite these signs, Moses remains hesitant, claiming he lacks eloquence and asking God to send someone else. In response, Yahweh rebukes Moses, reminding him that he created the mouth and determines who can speak. However, Yahweh concedes to Moses' reluctance and appoints Aaron, Moses' brother, to act as his spokesperson. This marks Aaron's first mention in the Torah as Moses' mouthpiece. Yahweh instructs Moses to take a staff to perform the miracles, with some scholars suggesting this detail reflects a difference between the Yahwist and Elohist versions of the story. In this role, Moses is prepared to confront both Pharaoh and the Israelites with God's message and signs. Christian hermits initially settled at Mount Serbal, believing it to be the biblical Mount Sinai. However, in the 4th century, during the Byzantine Empire, this site was abandoned in favor of Mount St. Catherine, which was newly identified as Mount Sinai. At the base of Mount St. Catherine's monastery was constructed, and the supposed location of the biblical burning bush was designated. The bush at this site, a bramble, Rubus sanctus, was later transplanted a short distance to the monastery's courtyard, while a chapel dedicated to the Annunciation was built over the original spot. A silver star marks where the bush's roots originally emerged. The monks at St. Catherine's Monastery, following church tradition, believe this bush to be the same one that Moses encountered, rather than a later substitute. Visitors to the chapel are required to remove their shoes, reflecting the biblical account in which God instructed Moses to do so because the ground was sacred. In modern times, it is not Mount St. Catherine but the neighboring Jebel Musa, Mount Moses, that is more commonly identified as Mount Sinai, a belief stemming from Bedouin tradition and popularized by guidebooks. Mount Serbal, Mount St. Catherine, and Jebel Musa are all located at the southern tip of the Sinai Peninsula. However, the name Sinai Peninsula is relatively modern and was not used during the time of Josephus or earlier. Many modern scholars and theologians propose alternative locations for Mount Sinai, including the Hijaz region in northwest Saudi Arabia, northern Araba near Petra, or other parts of the central and northern Sinai Peninsula. Consequently, Most academics and theologians agree that if the burning bush did exist, it is unlikely to be the bush preserved at St. Catherine's Monastery. In the medieval Catholic Church, the burning bush was seen as a typological parallel to the virgin birth of Jesus. Just as the bush burned but was not consumed, Mary conceived and gave birth as a virgin while remaining untouched and preserved. This imagery appeared in Catholic art, such as the burning bush triptych altarpiece from the 15th century, where depictions often featured the Virgin and Child at the center of the bush or tree. The base of the frame bears an inscription, translated from Latin, "In the bush which Moses saw burning without being consumed, we recognized, Holy Mother of God, your virginity wondrously preserved." The Eastern Orthodox Church shares a similar interpretation. Eastern Orthodoxy. In Eastern Orthodox tradition, originating from the early Church Fathers and affirmed by ecumenical councils, the flame Moses saw is understood as God's uncreated energies/glory, manifested as divine light. This explains why the bush was not consumed, as God's eternal, uncreated glory is not destructive. The Orthodox understanding of salvation centers on the vision of these uncreated energies/glory, a theme prominent in the works of Greek Orthodox theologians like John S. Romanides. Orthodox theology and hymnography also view the event as prefiguring the virgin birth of Jesus. Mary, referred to as the Theotokos, God-bearer, gave birth to God incarnate without harm or loss of virginity, paralleling the bush that burned without being consumed. The event is often called the unburnt bush in Orthodox parlance. Icons depicting this event, such as the unburnt bush icon, portray Mary as the God-bearer. The icon's feast day is celebrated on September 4th, in Russian, Neopalomea Kupina. Furthermore, Eastern Orthodoxy teaches that while God speaks to Moses in the narrative, the angel is also heard. The angel is interpreted as the Logos of God, aligning with the angel of Great Council, referenced in the Septuagint translation of Isaiah 9 verse 6, where the Masoretic text reads, "Counselor, Mighty God." The burning bush became a significant symbol for Reformed churches, starting with the Huguenots, French Calvinists, in 1583 during their 12th National Synod. The French motto Flagreur non consumer, I am burned but not consumed, reflects the church's understanding of the burning bush as a symbol of the suffering church that endures despite persecution. In Reformed theology, the fire represents God's presence, a consuming fire, Hebrews 12 verse 29, and points to a deeper miracle. God's grace sustains His covenant people, ensuring they are not consumed despite trials and suffering.